of Bachelors Grove. And that the avatar you're looking at there was about 30 feet in front, directly in front of the main gate to Bachelors Grove Cemetery. So that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. That's where we're going. All right, Bones, play the intro.
Warning: the following video contains strong language which may be offensive to some viewers and or inappropriate for children. The content within this video is intended for mature audiences only.
Southern Fried Paranormal with Len Dorman featuring Bones. Catch us on Spotify, iHeart, iTunes, Spreaker, Facebook, Stream, and everywhere else you catch your podcasts. And of course, WLFE-DB.com. Now, from the backwoods of southeast Arkansas, right beside the Bayou Bartholomew, the longest bayou on the planet, broadcasting from downtown metropolitan Cane Creek Township, here is your host, Len Dorman.
They're all my fantastic listeners. Glad you're here. Glad somebody's listening. And I hope you pick it up either on Facebook, YouTube, my personal YouTube channel. Just look up, type in Len Dorman, the name, and I've got one of the check marks at YouTube. It should send you right straight to my channel. It's also, you pick it up on the Southern Fried Paranormal page, which is a page connected to my Facebook profile. Of course, you can pick it up on the WLFE-DB Radio Network Facebook page. And, of course, you can, if you're listening to the WLFEDB.com, you can pick it up there. Later on, after the show gets uploaded, which is right after the show, you can go to Spotify or any of the other most popular, favorite, whatever, networks that do the podcast, and I'll be there. In fact, all my shows are uploaded into all Spotify and the others, the podcast networks. I'm not going to name them all. There's too many of them. All right. As I said, we're going to talk about Bachelors Grove. And like I said, I've talked about it on some of the shows before, but I like to talk about the guests. By the way, one of these photos, particularly this one, this was taken by Judy Huff when she was a member of Ghost Research Society. Dale Kaczmarek and Judy Huff also own copyright to this photo. This is not my photo. This is one taken in, I believe, 1991 by the Ghost Research Society with Dale Kaczmarek. He has that, and of course Judy Huff. I forget her hyphenated name, but it did take the photo. Infrared film, high-speed infrared film with a 35mm camera. This is in the background. You had to zoom in and see it. But they developed the film, and there it is. The negatives, the film, have been checked by several people, including Ghost Adventures. And the negative always came out where nobody has been tampered with. This shows up on the negative, just like you see it. Untampered with. Now, what I'm going to show you is the banner I put on Facebook. This is my theory. On the left, you see the Madonna Bachelors Grove Cemetery. Just a little crop photo of the one I just showed, minus the tree and etc. You will notice the hairstyle. You will notice the dress seems to have polka dots. Now, look at the picture in the middle. John Humphrey and Amelia Patrick Humphrey on their wedding day. Of course, this was taken in 1863. Why was only one photo taken? Well, You know how much photos cost back then? Even they could afford, even though their families did have money for the area and for the time. It was in the middle of the Civil War, and you just can't splurge for the expense of getting 1860s technology and taking photos. So this was their one and only wedding picture that I know of anyway. Look carefully at Amelia and look carefully at the Madonna. Hair is similar length, and you can see spots over her dress. You notice her wedding dress is darker with lighter dots on it. I have no idea the color of this dress. Could be blue, could be red, I don't know. But in this photograph, it comes out dark. The dots are much lighter. They show up very sharply on the dress in the photo. And if you notice, like I said, on the left, dress seems to be similar in length, although it's somewhat translucent. And you can see dots on the dress. So was this Amelia Patrick Humphrey just taking a break in Bachelors Grove and sitting on a stone that we don't know, last I heard, have never figured out where it goes. It's not in its proper location. When I was there, I've actually taken photos of women in a similar pose on the same stone. It's sitting in the same place it was back in 91 when the photo was taken. The reason, according to my research, that I suspect that it was Amelia Patrick Humphrey was what you see on the right. A ghost has to have a reason for a haunt, especially in a cemetery. I mean, it's kind of morbid having a ghost hang around day and night around the cemetery they're buried in. I find that that's just not something that happens very often. What would be the motivation for Amelia Patrick Humphrey to hang around in a cemetery that she personally is not buried in? Her and John are buried in a completely different cemetery. There's Thomas and Mabel, two other children that died at young age. Notice one died in 1874, the other died in 1880. Here is John Humphrey and Amelia. And you see she died in 1898, which is it's not correct with some of the stories that go around. The stories of tour guides will say 1891. Her stone says March 21st, 1898. So I kind of lean toward the stone rather than the legend. Mother of John Humphrey, and there's John Humphrey, the footstone. And once again, for two of the snippet, the two of the kids. There is the big plot in the cemetery where they are buried at, and it just out. Well, the fact is, the cemetery is inside the town that John Humphrey helped found and was the mayor of for several years. He got into politics and immediately started having an affair with his secretary. 6 months after Amelia died, he married his secretary. A little bit of a scandal. And put them in the Humphrey house. which was built, a home built for Amelia. Which was that was created a bit of a scandal back then, as you can imagine. A little close up of this note. Why would Amelia be there in Bachelors Grove when she's buried miles away at a new nice cemetery? The reason being that cemetery was not available for burial until 1869. As you see here, Libby May Humphrey died in 1865, 4 years before the cemetery was available. So they buried her in the Patrick plot. That's why I keep emphasizing Amelia Patrick Humphrey. That's her, of course, her last maiden name. In the Patrick plot, she had some aunts and uncles and cousins buried there, and they never got exhumed. Back in the 1980s, late 70s, early 80s, they exhumed most of the bodies in Bachelors Grove. But the Patricks were long gone, either died out or moved quite far away, and were not going to come and spend a whole bunch of their own money to exhume and long dead second, third, or fourth cousin. So they were never moved. So the 6 or 7 bodies that were buried in the Patrick plot are still there, including Libby. So my theory is every day about dusk, times vary, of course, with the daylight, you used to be able to see Amelia's ghost come through. Sometimes earlier in the day, but right at dusk. She would come through Bachelors Grove, pick up the spirit of Livy Mae, which, of course, as you see, died 11 months and 4 days old because the baby couldn't move herself, and take her with her to escape the nasty spirits that come out at night with Bachelors Grove. So this is my theory. The other women that people suspect, and there are several, don't really have a motivation. None of them were buried there. And why would a ghost haunt a cemetery, a long dead cemetery? And I say dead because the owner of it died, willed it to the county. The last burial was, I think, 89, which was the last caretaker who requested being buried there. They dug a deep post hole with post hole diggers and dropped his urn down in the hole and buried it. And I know pretty much exactly where it is. At least I can get in the area within a few yards of where he is buried. But I'm not talking. The people will try to dig that urn up, and no. Although they're really keeping track of that now. They start cutting down the grass. A few years before I left Chicago, the weeds were taller than I was during the summer. You could in the winter you had to crunch through dead weeds. In the spring you come up, I'd of course be sneezing with all the weeds growing, 6-foot weeds up there, because it was just completely not taken care of. The place was vandalized, dug up. Witches were having their way in place, doing things, and just a lot of bad stuff going on in that cemetery. The locals seem to have a thing. I think this has kind of gone away now. But basically, if you turned 18, if you were a real man, you went out to Bachelors Grove and tipped over a stone. They'd be strong enough to push over a 150, 200-pound stone. But as quickly as we try to put them up, somebody knock them down. Because that was a test of manhood or something. I don't know what the locals out there were doing. They like to go in there, get drunk, and spit on the graves. It was rather horrible. But now, well, just before I left, they cut all the weeds down and they keep it cut down regularly. They even cut down the flowers people had planted in there because you could hide in the tall flowers. First time they cut down, they left the flowers. I think some people were hiding in there at night in the flowers. So they said, okay, we got to cut the flowers down. For a while, they put cameras up. I heard they took the cameras down, then put them back up. That's the rumor surrounding Bachelors Grove. Now, are there or are there not cameras up there? People have fought over the cemetery. If you go in there and spend too much time, it seems to kind of possess you and want you to own it. I had one guy that came there, he was kind of doing the maintenance. He was emptying the garbage cans and picking up around the place. And he always said that if he got money, he was going to buy the area around Bachelors Grove, which the Forest Preserve owns the area around Bachelors Grove. The county owns the cemetery, not the Forest Preserve. That's why when you get caught in there, the Forest Preserve cannot go into the cemetery and drag you out and give you a ticket. The ticket is being in the Forest Preserve. That's $75 last I heard. The cemetery is actually owned by the county itself, and they have to call in a county mounted to come arrest you for getting to a cemetery. And whatever the county mounted gives you a ticket for, as soon as he leads you out of the cemetery, you're given a $75 in the Forest Preserve after dusk ticket. At least it was $75 when I left there. It may have gone up by then. In fact, I kind of hope it has, just to keep people out of there. The place is nowhere near as haunted as it used to be. My theory is, again, this is all theory, that some of my contact with Libby May got her to where she could move, because she followed me to my house a couple of times. And now she can, Amelia does not have to come by and pick her up. She can go to where her mother is buried. Most likely, they go out to their Humphrey house, which last I heard used to be one Sunday a month was open for tours, but I think they kind of shut that down. There's too many people going in there, and I don't know what the issue was, but that's where those photos were taken. Yeah, this is a photo of a photo. I took the yellow out here. I made it black and white. And taking the yellow out of it, making it just black and white. You can see it looks like very much the same dress. A better picture. This is why I'm thinking it's the same person. And she's the only one of all the suspects for the Madonna of Bachelors Grove that actually has a reason. But the other ones, you're sitting there, why would a person who is dead and buried in one cemetery miles away would be coming to Bachelors Grove when she has no relations there? And my theory is Amelia was coming in there to be with her firstborn child that died at 11 months and 4 days back in 1865. Now, if you believe in ghost boxes, SP7, Echo Box, things like this, I have had on Echo Box Amelia admit that she was the Madonna of Bachelors Grove Cemetery. I believe Dale Kaczmarek got her to admit that on SB7 or SP 10, 12, whatever that number is he's got, the nicer model, that she was the Madonna of Bachelors Grove. So at least two people have talked to her and admitted, and she admitted that was her. She is the most likely because she's the only one of the suspects with reason. Okay, what we're going to talk about now is a website. You see it on the bottom of the screen. I believe it's still running here. Bachelorsgrove.com. This updated last on 7/17/2021. The people who set this up and did all this work going into the site basically neither one of them are in the paranormal anymore. I believe one moved to New England area and got married and couldn't care less about Bachelor's Grove. The other one went back to his roots and does nothing in the paranormal. People used to scrap over it, are doing a lot less. They're not. I don't think either one of them are leading tours now. They were talking about putting, but in the picture you see where I was sitting just outside, they were talking about putting some cabins along there. So it's a popular path where people jog or just walk through the woods. It's a mile or two trail, goes in a big circle around this area. And they were talking about putting some cabins there so people could stay overnight. Well, you had two people who were trying to outbid the other to rent the cabins every weekend for years. And each one was saying the other had no business ever renting a cabin, wanted exclusivity. And the Forest Preserve just said, forget it. We're not building the cabins if it's going to cause a fist fight between people. And we're not going to rent it out to give you exclusivity. And we're not going to give you rights to it on the weekend, every weekend, or even some weekends. So they just said, forget it. It's too much of a hassle. So that idea got dropped. But what we're going to do is scan a little bit of the path to Bachelor's Grove. By the way, if you've never been to Bachelor's Grove, it is only 1 acre. It was to the actual area which the cemetery sits. You still see there's several remains of houses that were there. The exact date it became a cemetery is unknown. It predates any cemetery requirements and laws. The Everton family, it's the first documented as having owned the farmland that would eventually be the cemetery and surrounding forest preserve. It came about when Edward Everton sold the farm to Frederick Smith in 1865. The rest of the farm was sold to Smith with the exception of 1 acre to be used as a cemetery. Earliest headstone date 1832. Their interviews recorded older locals that remember seeing headstones dated much earlier. Now that goes back to what's been exhumed. They exhumed. There's 400 people that were buried there. That's a very crowded 1 acre cemetery. About half were dug up, so there's over 200 people there, still buried there. And some of the locals have seen a lot of the people who had exhumed their bodies took their headstones with them to the new cemetery. Either used the headstones in the cemetery or at least took them out to keep them being stolen. Some people just didn't want to take a heavy stone out and they dumped it in the pond. So any of the stones found in the pond, yeah, it kind of looks good sitting in the cemetery, but they're not sitting on a grave because the body got exhumed. It wasn't funny at all. Internet just booted me completely off. Let me go back to what I was saying. Uh, Nurture arrived in the area in 1832. He claimed he was named it, but a missionary's notes predated Rexford's arrival. Probably, again, the missionary called it that because of the Bachelors living there. His daughters, Stephen's daughter, says a group of bachelors had sworn to keep a bachelor's life and never marry. None would keep the vow, of course, and those names are still alive in the south suburbs of Chicago. Crandall name is also among those of the earliest settlers. Herman Crandall was the first of the family to arrive. Son Ben gave some history in the 1929 news article. He walked from New York to Fort Dearborn in 1833 and bought 80 acres of land in Brennan, just a few miles south of where Bachelors Grove Cemetery is now. Two brothers followed suit shortly after Herman. In the following years, some sisters made the brave move west as well. Mark Crandall is there in the photo. James Fulton, got a picture of him on the Fulton farm in 1915. This farm is now the site of the Forest Preserve National Gold Course. He built the barn in the mid 1800s. The woods, actually, I think that's golf course, not gold course. Woods in the background now, Yankee Woods, part of the Cook County Forest Preserves. 1850s, when Rock Island Railroad construction began, John and Jane opened their home for free to boarders, charging 10 cents a meal. Family legend suggested John Fulton also assisted Mr. Clark in locating a site where it's believed that the first schoolhouse in the area was built. At the time of his death in 1883, John Fulton owned over 1,000 acres of prime farmland in Brennan Township. Some of this land is now occupied by local businesses and homes in Denby Park. Many acres also become part of the Cook County Forest Preserve System. If you look around Bachelors Grove, you will see that the trees in the cemetery and around the cemetery are mostly junk trees. There's some big older trees there that were probably there and been there 100 years, but mostly is made of short, scrappy wood. You can't make a board out of it. It's too spindly, and it's not very strong. It's just stuff that just grows up in the forest in the area when you leave empty farmland and not many real trees growing around. Fulton is said to have acquired partial ownership of Bachelors Grove Cemetery. This comes from family legend. No documentation supports this. The Fulton family had been taking care of and advocating for the cemetery for many years. 1935, Joseph Fulton, nephew of John Fulton Sr., walked through Bachelor Grove Cemetery with a report and gave a personal recollection of the people buried within. The account was published in the Blue Island Sun Standard and has been a foundation block of burial research at the cemetery. Clarence J. Fulton, great-grandson of original proprietor John Fulton, was the last independent trustee of Bachelor's Grove. Clarence, along with his nephew, trying to take care of the cemetery, were documented by local newspapers in the 70s and early 80s. Fulton namestayed prominent local towns throughout the years. Many of John's descendants still reside in Tinley Park, Blue Island, and Benham Township. Approximately 15 members of the Fulton family are laid to rest in the cemetery. If you go there, the big stone that a lot of people see, the Patrick plot is the second largest plot in there. The first largest is the Fulton. So you see, they were a powerful family back then, and there's 15 people probably still buried there around the Fulton stone. The 1864 deed, property transfers, indicate the cemetery is 1 acre in size, neglecting to give the dimensions of the cemetery itself. A deed from 1909, where a portion of the Smith property was sold, provides some points of reference to the cemetery's legal description. Frederick Smith is said to be the owner of burial lot 24. I believe his parents were buried in this lot, as his family has stated. Where the trails cross, original plot map, notation of photocopy of cemetery plot in that area. Okay, that's a little bit about the history. And we are just looking around to see what we can find here. This site was basically put together back when there were a lot of people going there, and I'm personally, during this time, I figured I was there for 10 days in a row at one period. And during that period of 3 weeks, I was not there maybe 3 days. So I spent hours and hours in that cemetery. One time when there was an event out there, a meal held at another location, and Dale Kasmerick led tours to Bachelor's Grove. I stayed in the cemetery and welcomed the tourists to the cemetery when they came in, and talked a little bit to Dale's tour group. Although it was not Dale's group, he was just the speaker, the host of the tour itself. That was some fun times. I believe I was there from 9 o'clock in the morning until dusk. Then I finally went home. I was finally picked up and after the event was over. Didn't get anything to eat either. I believe Dale brought me a snack somewhere along the line. Some people believe, including the creator of this site, actually affecting, manipulating people after visiting the cemetery. And that's what I was mentioning before. You have a strong, the cemetery seems to want people to own it. So I think most of that is gone. It was a dangerous negativity for some people of the grove, and some of it can be life altering. It's not just a cemetery you see on the History Channel. It was extraordinary. I think between me helping Libby May and, of course, the Madonna, Amelia, kind of got them straightened out and them keeping the place up and keeping the people from messing it up has really helped keeping the place less haunted than it was before. Okay. There you see in that circle a photo that was taken. Is this pareidolia? It looks like a woman in a dress outside the fence looking in. In fact, if you look at that photo, there is several what could be human figures there. So again, is this pareidolia, where the mind pictures something that's not really there? That you be the judge. Oh, here it is. This is back before they started cutting the weeds down. You can see the height of the weeds already here. This was taken, that V tree there. In front of it, you see a stone. That's a Patrick stone. That's where you would see Amelia coming to, because Libby is buried on or under, right under or around that area of where that stone sits in front of that V tree. And you see right there, is that pareidolia? Or is that actually a child there? There was nobody else in the cemetery other than the photographer. There's not a person standing there. Libby May has several siblings. One of them died at 15. Two of them died younger, as I showed earlier. Is this one of the kids? And we have caught them playing with Libby May before. See if I can pick that up. That's John's. Ah, there you go. Two other siblings. One died at 3 months, Thomas, and Mabel died at 4 months. And there was another one died at about 15. So they, people died young back then in the 1800s. And you had to have a lot of children, because most likely, if you had 10 children, you're going to lose half. You're going to lose at least 3 or 4 before they become 20. That's just the way life is. And it says I'm getting unstable internet. But it seems to be working. Uh, I've had great internet for several weeks, and I come here and try to do a show, and everything goes wrong. Oh boy. Anyway, back to what we were talking about. That's where they were. I'm losing my voice. Lots more to come. Under construction. Keep checking back. You want to hear what we have to say about this topic. This was written in 2018. Of course, now I left Chicago. My last investigation was the fall of 15. I wish somebody would take over this website. Fantastic information on it. As far as the way they're going now, in the fall of 2013, this is back before I left. I remember this. Cook County Real Estate Office, who owns the cemetery, came into the Grove for the first time ever, do some overdue maintenance in surrounding area. They stepped up the maintenance within the cemetery for the first time in decades, maybe the first time. Trimmed all the weeds, grass, and smaller growing trees were cut, removed from the 51-acre cemetery. Sight to behold. They also put a gate. Disappeared within a week. I remember speaking to the people that were maintaining it, and the people coming in there so hard. I said, "Well, you could put a gate up or clear the fence and put you some guard dogs." They said people in there would the neighboring people to get into the cemetery would actually kill the dog. You'd have a dead dog almost every day. So you'd have to buy plenty of dogs. I said, well, you could put a man up there. Surely wouldn't shoot the man. And they said, if you put a guard 24/7 in there, uh, you're going to have some deaths because it was his belief that people would actually kill a human being to get into that cemetery. I'm not sure what you call that, desperation, uh, partial possession. What what would hold somebody to where they would want to kill a person to get into an abandoned cemetery at night? It blows my mind. Why would you want to climb a fence? Why would you want to get through barbed wire? One person threatened to sue the county because they got tore up from trying to get through the barbed wire at the top of the fence. Barbed wire didn't stop them. They come in there with cutters and would cut the chain link fence to get in. It's been absolutely crazy. But they've had classes out there at one point back in 13. Place was being maintained. Uh, Money was being raised. You could get refrigerator magnets, calendars, and they people were used to going there for free, and they just would not pay for something. is all I can think of. And with all the arguing and fighting over this, it seems to encourage that people literally fighting over the cemetery. I think some of the bad spirits of the place like to see people argue, fuss, and fight over the place. Okay, here's what everybody's been waiting for. Documented evidence is just a few decades shy of 200 years, possibly dating back to the Black Hole War. There's no proof or documentation to prove this theory, but there was an Indian village nearby that got wiped out, is the theory. Vandalism began as early as the 1930s. People started hearing about nationwide in 1932, especially in the late 40s and 50s. And a lot of local stories come up with countless personal experiences. A lot of stuff's been told, retold, and blown all out of proportion, which is why people just had a fit about getting in there. Some are fairly consistent. Uh, is it one of the most haunted cemeteries in the world? It can't be as haunted as Paris is, with thousands and thousands of people buried in that, the catacombs. But for a 1 acre cemetery, I would say it was, not anymore, one of the most haunted 1 acres in the United States, at the very least. Desecration, condemnation, vandalism, satanic rituals, murderous mobsters, maybe. There has been a gun found in the creek. Possibly disturbed Indian mounds, very possible, with a nearby village. And then there's documentation there. Native Americans sometimes go in there at night to talk with their ancestors. This is not in the cemetery. This is in the forest preserve past the cemetery. You got a quarry pond. The pond is not very deep. It's only about 6, 7 feet deep. At the absolute deepest usually averages about 5. So a lot of the stories about hiding dead bodies in there, you don't hide a dead body in 5 feet of water. I think that you got to go to Maple Lake, where it's 50 and 60 feet deep at the deepest, is where you want to hide a body. A lot of heartache, of course. The Indian village got wiped out. The families in the area had some hard times. Is there a vortex or portal to another dimension? A time slip warp gives you a glimpse of a parallel universe. Hints of disappearing house and phantom old cars that appear. Well, the path to Bachelors Grove. Not talking about the website, talking about the path. You have to walk down to go from the parking lot, across the highway, and then down there is your own, the new Mytholodian Highway. The path you're walking on is the old Mytholodian Highway. There's what's remains of pylons for a bridge at the creek, right there at the cemetery. Walk there in about a minute and see the remains of the old bridge where a highway used to go. So, of course, if there's a ghost car going on that road, it's going to be kind of old. We've heard the stories firsthand, seen it with a few persons. And it's one of those places where you will. They've actually got a picture of Southtown Star, Haunted Tales from Bachelors Grove, and the picture I showed you of Amelia is also with that. So I am not the only one who thinks that Amelia is that person. is the Madonna of Bachelors Grove. Okay, I'm going to try to hold this show to 1 hour, so I've only got 6 or 7 minutes left. Multiple reporters of a late night driver seen a car pulled over on the side of the Midlothian Turnpike near the cemetery. Passing still there, a glance in the rearview mirror would reveal that there was in fact no vehicle there. The car disappeared. Other drivers of a vehicle coming up from behind passed him only to pull off to the road ahead of them in the near distance. But as they approached where it was, it disappeared. In the late 1970s, there was a couple going down the highway and were involved in an accident with a speeding brown sedan coming from the cemetery crashed into the car. A thundering impact was felt, and sounds of crunching metal and shattered glass was heard. As the couple exited the vehicle, they were stunned as the brown sedan faded from the sight. To make matters even more confusing, this couple was the fact there was no damage at all to their vehicle. It's that older vehicles driving past the cemetery, car's engine stopping, vehicle rolling past the cemetery with no power, only to restart the engine as they were past the area. The Phantom Farmhouse. I never actually saw the farmhouse. I got 5 minutes left. That started surfacing in the 60s. People down there had saw this house that shrunk, smaller size, and eventually disappeared from sight. Most described it as a 2-story white column house with porch, swing, and soft light burning on the window, which would draw one in. With a line of one person, so with a line of people going to the front door waiting to go in. It said if you go to the house, you would never be seen again. Actually, it just disappears. You never get to it. There's 2 homesteads along the path. None seem to match the description of the shrinking house. There was a house nearby that fit that description, but I never saw it, so this is all just stories to me. Unseen footsteps. Al Capone. Artifacts around there has been amazing, especially when the creek floods and then dries up. There's all kinds of stuff you can dig up in there. Electronics interference. There are 2 cell phone towers near the cemetery entrance or near the path entrance. Electronics don't seem to work there. You can't pick up any. I've only seen a K2 meter flash once for a second. Saw a millimeter actually flash for a second, and that's all the meter activity I've ever seen. Millimeter is useless there except to check temperatures for cold spots. Cold spots I have seen. And of course, the Madonna of Bachelors Grove is the biggest story. There are a few that would like to state Amelia Packard as being the Madonna as fact. Well, a couple of us have got her confirmed. So if you believe in ghost boxes, there's also a little bit of. By the way, this little personal note: Amelia did actually travel down to Hot Springs, Arkansas, for looking for relief. She suffered quite a bit the last few years, and she returned. She died of pneumonia for complications a short few weeks later after a long trip. So that's the story. And that's all on Bachelor's Grove that I want to cover tonight. I want to get on out of here. I just want to do an hour show just to have one. I've been wanting to talk about some of the facts of Bachelor's Grove and to find out the evidence I personally got there was absolutely amazing. Maybe another time I will show some of the videos that I've got. Some people have actually seen the videos I have of my first contact with Libby May. She started as an attachment with me once. I asked her to. She jumped on me along with 2 of her siblings, with me and an assistant. and we went out to. It was that Sunday where the Humphrey House was open, and I let them off in the living room of the Humphrey House. I got her contact by using a temperature gauge on a modified K2 meter, not the lights. Okay, I'm gonna get on out of here. Bones, do the outro real quick so we can keep this show to under 2 hours. Good night, everybody. Hope you enjoyed it. Maybe I would do this again, put another hour show on Bachelors Grove, as I barely touched what actually goes on there. Good night, everybody. Go ahead and crank her up. Bones. Good night.
Thanks for watching our show. Be sure to tune in to next week as once again we journey way down south into Bayou Country for another heaping portion of Southern Fried Paranormal with Len Dorman and Bones. Make sure to like, share, and follow. Y'all come back now. You hear?